Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 86 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I'm your host, Mark Harris. Going to be a shorter show this time. Colton's gone, kind of just the 4th of July malaise. But I did want to touch on a few things, starting with probably the biggest news item that hit ASU football or ASU fans this past week, and doesn't even really affect anything at all, because that would be ASU being picked last in the Big 12 football media preseason poll. Out of all the teams, all 16 teams in the Big 12, your Arizona State Sun Devils were picked 16th. 16th. Utah was picked first with 21st place votes, 906 total points. I'll share the screen here. Utah number 1, K-State, Oklahoma State, Kansas, Arizona 5. I'm not going to read them all. But then you get down to Arizona State, 141. Clearly the last team, kind of battling it out there with Houston. I guess my takeaway with this is ASU didn't finish last in the Pac-12 last year, and they're not going to finish last in the Big 12 this year. ASU is not the worst team in this conference. They're just not. It's probably Houston, Cincinnati, maybe Baylor. But that would probably, I think BYU is a bottom tier team, kind of along, same with ASU, but I don't think either of those teams will finish last. And then Colorado, who the heck knows? There's some volatility there. So the talent has been upgraded basically across the board, right? The offensive line depth is much stronger. I mean, even the quarterback depth, right? Like having it be Bourguet versus Jeff Sims for the backup job is better than it just being Bourguet, right? Because at least Jeff Sims gives you the dual threat capabilities, gives you just more athleticism, gives Kenny Dillingham the ability to put him in kind of unique packages, different points in the year. And maybe you get through a game with a option type offense for that game. And, just like you got through a game with the swinging gate as an option. So you have that. And I mean, just more reinforcements on the defensive side. Your defensive line looks pretty, you at least have the bodies there. Linebacker, you should be good. And the secondary, I was looking through the roster the other day. I mean, there's so many key players coming in on the secondary. I think that when you under the tutelage of Brian Ward and their pressure heavy defense, like I think some of those guys will be able to make some plays this year. And we didn't even see Xavier Alford on the field last year. Miles Rouser is going to be a big player for this team. So I think the thing, and Colton and I touched on this with the ranking from CBS Sports last week, and nobody ever mentions the defense when they're talking about Arizona State. It's always, they lost Jaden Rashada, and the Herm Edwards era, they're still down in the mud from that. And those things are both kind of true. We kind of explained the Jaden Rashada stuff last week. Like, are they comparing it to what Jaden Rashada was? The quarterback who, was injured and played 3 games last year, and, outside of the first half against Southern Utah, like looked like a freshman quarterback, nothing wrong with that. Or are they comparing Jaden Rashada to what they think Jaden Rashada could be, and like Sam Levitt is going to be considered better than some of these quarterbacks by the end of the year. I believe that. Just with the way that he came in at camp and just kind of took control I think that really needs to be considered when you're talking about this team. Dillingham said he completed 70% of passes at camp or at spring ball. And so again, as I mentioned last week, Levitt was a four-star recruit. He went to I mean, he looked decent in his playing time at Michigan State. It's kind of similar to um, Rashada in the sense that it just wasn't that much overall work. But I think that he uh, is a good building block to have. And you don't go into the season being like, oh, we need Sam Levitt to, you know, patrol an air raid offense. No, like you need Sam Levitt to be just a, ball control quarterback, get the short passing game going. He can run with the ball. I keep stressing that, like he's a much better athlete than people think in terms of his running ability. And when you combine that with all the running backs ASU has, like I think even a lot of people who are down on ASU will acknowledge that, like, oh, like, yeah, this team is well set up in the backfield with Scatterbo and McCaskill and Carlos Brooks and Rayleigh Brown and Jason. Like, you just got guys, talented guys that can come in and make a difference. So it's just, yeah, that's the big reason that I just think the roster as a whole is just better than it was last year, even with even though, losing Elijah Badger is not ideal, but I just don't think that I think the receivers are good enough to overcome his absence. And I think some of it is just like getting better quarterback play. And I'll wrap this up with Levitt, but I was looking, when Levitt left Michigan State and when he was kind of in the process of transferring to ASU, I read some, I saw some Michigan State people being like, oh, like I wish we could keep him, or that's too bad he's leaving or whatever. So I went and kind of just did some like Twitter search and found that that I wasn't like making that up, right? Basically, I was just kind of looking back this week to see like, how did people actually react when Sam Levitt left? And there was a like, oh, it'd be really great to have this guy. Like he could be the quarterback of the future. Love it if he would have stayed. And then once kind of people found out the reasoning why, which is Jonathan Smith, when he was at Oregon State, didn't recruit Sam Levitt, who was a Portland high schooler, didn't recruit him to go to Oregon State. Levitt remembers that, and just basically like told Jonathan Smith, like, no, like you didn't believe me then. Why are you going to believe me now? So I'm going down to ASU and work with Kenny Dillingham, who did recruit him in high school when he was at Florida State. So it's interesting how these relationships all come together. So I think just an aside, like I love how Levitt seems to have that kind of FU edge to him. I think that really helps. So anyway, like just wrapping it all, tying it all back to the Big 12 media poll, like ASU's roster is just going to be okay, at least, and that's better than last year. Their defense, again, like this team, the first 2 months of the year, their defense either played well or played okay, and then it all fell apart at the end of the year when at Utah with a fourth string quarterback, like that game, they didn't play well in that game. That game they just didn't play well. Against Oregon, they didn't play well, and against Arizona, they didn't play well. But I think that those three games obscure what the actual defense was like on a game-to-game basis for most of the season, So that's something to watch for in year two under Brian Ward. Another thing, injuries. Injuries will not affect this team the same way they did last year, almost certainly. I can't actually guarantee that or anything, but when you lose your two tackles in the second game of the year, and that was already a weak position group or thin position group, I mean, we all saw what happened. So that kind of torpedoed the offense early. Really bad timing. obviously. And, later in the year, you have defensive guys get injured, to the point against Washington, you couldn't even kick a field goal at the end because you didn't have enough big bodies. So I think there's going to be, then this ties into the depth. Like, I think that you won't have as much injuries. And if you do have some more injuries, they won't be quite as destructive because you'll likely have someone competent behind that person. Maybe not great, but competent. So that's another thing. And then close game regression. If you look, I mean, I've heard some people argue ASU could have won 6 games. I think this podcast argument has always been there is a statistical world that exists where ASU won 6 games last year. If you just flip the results of the Washington game, the Cal game, and the Colorado game, I don't actually believe that's was a real possibility, but they definitely could have easily won 5 games last year. That's for sure. So, you just kind of get some of that close game regression again this year, and maybe you win 6 games or whatever it is, So, and if you win 5, 6 games, which is, I think, the expectation for this podcast and a lot of shows and the ASU fandom, you would not finish last in the Big 12. So I am not worried about that at all. I think it's almost better to actually finish last in a ranking like this instead of second or third to last. Cincinnati's at 14th, Houston's at 15th. Just because it's I don't know, maybe extra motivation, I guess. Think that not only are you bad, but you're the worst. And it's not hyperbole, at least according to the media. So, we'll see how that could come into play. I don't, who knows how much that actually really matters at all. But yeah. A few other points with the media poll. West Virginia finished last in the media poll last year, and they went 8-4. So I think they won their bowl game too. I don't know. Either way, they went 8-4 in the regular season, and most certainly did not finish last in the Big 12. So and I also saw a few. I think this is a big reason why ASU actually finished last. I saw a few of the ballots from a few Arizona people, I think a Colorado person, and none of them had ASU last. All of them had them, low 13, 14, 12, whatever, where they should probably be ranked, but not last. And I found that very interesting because they at least paid attention to ASU last year. Maybe not directly, but tangentially. And I think that shows the actual quality of last year's ASU team, which was a feisty team, a team that basically didn't get blown out until the end of the year when they were playing really good teams, and their roster was, especially on the defensive side, was more thin than it was earlier in the year. So I think that goes to show, if you watch the ASU team from last year on a game-to-game basis, particularly kind of in that middle stretch of the season where they almost, or they lose to Cal on the road by 3 points, that, coin flip game against Colorado, you beat Washington, or I'm sorry, you almost beat Washington, and then you beat Washington State. Oh, and the USC game as well. Kind of the beginning of Pac-12 play up until that Utah game. And you could even, I mean, you're still counting in the UCLA game after that. So for most of the Pac-12 season, it was a feisty team that you couldn't, I mean, the defending runner-ups couldn't, needed everything to beat. So I think I think a lot of these voters, they think of ASU in generalities and in kind of recent stereotypes, which is understandable. It really is. That's why I'm not upset about being ranked last. I just kind of just look at it, I get it. Like I said, I'm wearing the shirt. I am a homer for ASU. I just don't think they're going to be last. I think that's a pretty low result for them. And even just playing the probabilities, like there's 15 other teams. It's more likely one of the other ones is going to finish last, even if ASU isn't that good. They do have a tough schedule, so maybe that plays a part into it. But I feel like ASU finds a way to win 3 Big 12 games this year, go 3-6 in the Big 12 at least, and that's probably not going to have you finish in last place. So, I saw I saw Ralph Amsden of I think he's at Arizona Sports 360 now. He said he would camp in his backyard for the entire month of January if ASU finished in last place in the Big 12. And Ralph lives in Charlotte, so not like it's some totally winter climate, but it's also more, it's still sleeping outside in the winter and not in Arizona. And even in Arizona, it would be cold too. So pretty much anywhere other than like Miami, that would be unpleasant. So let's hope our Sun Devils keep Ralph inside in in January. Yeah, I mean, I listened to the Locked On Pac-12, or not Locked On Pac-12, Locked On College Football show with Spencer McLaughlin, and like he's a based out of Utah, and like he was looking at it like ASU's not going to finish last. Like yeah, and I agree with their assessments, and it's basically just a lot of the same things that I'm saying here. I think, yeah, I think a lot of people who say they're going to finish last, it's like, oh, okay, and we don't know what the quarterback's going to be, and Jaden Rashad is gone, and how they're going to act with Herm and all this, and it's like, okay, like I think a lot of that stuff's in the past, and I think again, this roster is just deeper than it was before. It may not have it, without Badger, without Jalen Conyers, BJ Green, like those are legitimate losses. So I just haven't heard those. I just haven't heard like, oh, they lost BJ Green, they lost Conyers, they lost Badger. This is why they're gonna struggle this year. It's all, oh, Jaden Rashad is gone. Oh, the Herm Edwards, like they got the Herm Edwards sanctions and all this, and it's like, okay, like it doesn't. I don't think it's gonna have that much effect on them this year. So we'll see. Uh, still just my main point with that is I just think the depth is gonna give them much more wiggle room than they had last year. So, speaking of wiggle room, ASU men's basketball, it's crazy. Still, I still am blown away how now that you have the reports of Jaden Quaintance being on campus, Joseph Sinone about to come on campus, BJ Freeman transferring here, and you have these early reports out of camp that are just like, this is the best. Hurley saying this is the best team we've had. I have high expectations for these freshmen. You have to throw Amir Ali in there too, right? Like it's it's crazy. The Big 12 schedule matrix came out, and for ASU, the teams we play home and away, Arizona, BYU, and Utah, makes sense that you game at in Tempe and a game on the road. Our home only schools. These are the teams we host but do not travel to: Baylor, Cincinnati, Iowa State, TCU, Texas Tech, and West Virginia. So you have two of the Eastern schools you don't even have to go to. You don't go to Cincinnati, you don't go to West Virginia, which is awesome. And then, getting Iowa State at home as opposed to having to go up to Iowa State is huge. Same with Baylor and TCU and Texas Tech. Those are more kind of winnable games. Not that they'll be likely wins, but winnable. And then, at Colorado, that's not too bad. You're at UCF, long trip. At Houston, that's going to be extremely tough. You're probably going to lose that game anyway. At Kansas, same deal. Kansas State, Oklahoma State, those are good road environments. So, um, I keep coming back to the end of the Pac-12 season and what every ASU fan thought when, it's like, oh my gosh, we're going to the Big 12. This is going to be a murderer's row. The depth of talent in the league. It's just ASU isn't built for that at all. It can't even handle the Pac-12. It's just the season ended in an absolute disaster. And now fast forward 3 months and it's like, this is like the program that I have the most hope in at ASU right now. Like, it's crazy to enter the, sports calendar year at Arizona State in the program that a lot of fans have the highest expectation for is the men's basketball team. Now, some of that is just due to football struggling, and no one knows for sure how it's going to look like this year with Dillingham and everything, and baseball kind of just good but not good enough, and women's basketball and softball down, and all this. But still, like, I'm not like afraid of going into the Big 12 anymore just because we have this team. They were talking about Quaintance is he has the same like mentality as Lou Dort, which I'm like, man, like that's awesome. This dude's this freaking 16-year-old 5-star center who's like ready to go, like ready to compete at the college level right away, or at least he has the mentality of that. I mean, that's awesome. ASU has had uh high profile recruits, high profile centers. Jethro Shishumpa comes to mind. Tayshaun Cherry, everyone's favorite former ASU men's basketball player. They came in with the 4-star ranking. You can throw Josh Christopher into the mix, Bagley. Like, they came in with the ranking, but either the talent wasn't there, the mentality wasn't there, the drive wasn't there, whatever it may be, and they just didn't play that well. Sam Cunliffe, there's another example. That's way back. Uh, you know, and so if you have this Quaintance kid coming in where it's like, oh, he's ready to compete, he's ready to contribute right away, that's awesome. And then you add in the rest of the guys. You add BJ Freeman, you add Adam Miller coming back. Man, there's a few guys I'm forgetting. Amir Ali. There's definitely a transfer that I'm forgetting. I'm gonna look this up right now. Because you got BJ Free, Alston Mason for sure. He'll be kind of a bench player. There's a guard that I cannot remember right now. Let's hope this loads quickly. Bashir Jihad. Oh, Austin Nunez. Austin Nunez coming back off the bench. I mean, we talked about that, just keeping the good relationship with him even after he left. And we have size too. That's the thing. I'm just looking through this. Amir Ali, 6'8". BJ Freeman, 6'6". Brandon Gardner, redshirt freshman from USC, 6'8". Then you got, okay, Bobby Hurley Jr., 6'1" now. But Bashir Jihad, 6'9". And then Sean Phillips, 7 foot. Jaden Quaintance, 6'9". Joseph Sinone, 6'5". Yeah, you got, Alston Mason is 6'2", and so's Nunez, and Adam Miller, 6'3". So those guys aren't like the biggest players out there, but it's so great to just like look at the rankings, or just be excited for men's basketball, and have actual real like reason to be excited for the upcoming men's basketball season. So everything I've seen coming out of their initial practices looks good, and Adam Miller says that, like, was saying how Hurley was just had a renewed focus this offseason, and Hurley was just saying how he changed his ways, and about thinking about NIL and stuff, and like it's all just, especially when you hear someone changing their ways about how they thought about NIL at ASU. It's like all these things that we've been railing about for years, just like get on with the updated new world or whatever. Like get with the changes, get with the times. That's the phrase I was looking for. Get with the times. And someone finally does, and oh my gosh, like we bring in 2 5-stars, and it's like, yes, like this is what we've been trying to get you to do. So it also shows how basketball is just so much different than football in terms of recruiting. And with ASU football, I think sometimes fans complain about not getting uh in this class, not getting the blue chip recruits, and I understand that. Unfortunately for ASU fans, and it's kind of applies to the whole Big 12. There's only one school right now that's like way ahead of ASU in the recruiting, and that's TCU. And they're, they played in the national championship game recently, so like they should be ahead of us. But uh, it's an easy sell against the Big 12 and being like, hey, like you're not playing in the best of the best, right? Like if you're an SEC team, if you're a Big 10 team recruiting these kids, the two 4 stars in Arizona both went to Big 10 teams. Guess what? Guess what they can sell? Like, hey, like you're playing in the highest level. You're playing against Michigan. You're playing against USC. You're playing against Oregon, whatever. So Big 12 that doesn't have that, but men's basketball completely different, right? Bobby Hurley can go to Jaden Quaintance and be like, hey, we have some money for you, and we're playing in the premier conference in men's basketball. And the same thing goes to Sanan. And you look at like Baylor just has a huge freshman coming in. Kansas always does. Texas Tech has had that in a bit. Arizona always does. I think BYU is a really good. They've had some hype around their roster too, in K-State and stuff. So like, you don't have to sell. You don't have to like convince kids to go to the Big 12. You have to just explain, hey, like this is where we're gonna play and all this. So like, these are our opponents, and it's it's the highest level of competition, and so that's at least ASU men's basketball has been able to draft off of that, which I like. So I don't know, who knows how it's actually all going to play out, but it's just so encouraging to go into this basketball season and you're not deathly afraid of what could happen. Because I can only imagine what the final scores would be if ASU men's basketball from last year played in the Big 12 this year. Oh my gosh. I mean, that would just be absolute torture. So thankfully that reality doesn't exist. And we're going in with Amir Ali and Bashir Jihad and all these experienced players that can help us win. So that's good. Going to touch on ASU baseball a bit just before I wrap this short little show up. Transfer portal window closed. And, they added some relief pitchers. They didn't really add anyone that's notable. There's more depth in the pitching. So that's good. I mean, you need that. You bring some guys home. There was a guy from Tennessee that transferred in. I think a guy from somewhere in New York that came in too. So, gonna need more development there. They did hire. Well, I guess they did get this catcher Manny Garza from Rice. Hit 270, so that's pretty good. Oh, who do they? Oh, yeah. ASU, this is from Kendall Rogers on June 27th. ASU Baseball is hiring Jeremy Accardo as this new pitching coach. Accardo is the AAA pitching coach for the Brewers. It was previously was a minor league pitching coordinator for the Mets. So that's a real name, and it's it's like the Brewers organization develops pitchers, and so if you can bring that to ASU, I really love that. And so hopefully these new guys they get, the guys they already have, continue to develop, and that weakness can kind of be shored away this next year. And then they lost some players. Most of them, there was like 6 that they lost. Most of them were, backups and weren't critically important players, aside from Thomas Burns, the pitcher, our best pitcher from last year, and Ethan Mendoza. Both went to Texas. So on one hand, it sucks to lose your best pitcher and a promising younger middle infielder. That does suck. On the other, the fact that they went to Texas, Texas, that just recently stole the Texas A&M manager. or not stole, but totally paid for him to not stole at all, completely, money whipped him to come to Texas, basically. So Texas, Texas just has gobs of money that they can throw at their baseball program and, um, just kind of pick who they want. So it sucks. It sucks. I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't suck to not have those guys, but I think the fact that it's Texas, it's like, well, if they're going to leave, they're going to the place that stole Texas A&M's coach, and I'm sure Texas has poached all sorts of other guys from other rosters this offseason. I saw guys from UCLA have transferred, and Texas Tech, it's not just the ASU thing. So still not great, but at least it's kind of explainable. And honestly, I think I don't have any knowledge of this at all, but just contextually, like it probably feels like they might have lost more people had they not, gone in on the focusing on NIL after the season. So, hopefully those losses don't end up being a big deal down the road. We'll find out about that in 2025. So not worried about that too much right now. So, all right, that's it for today. Big 12 Media Days will be on Monday. So July 8th, I believe. Interesting to see what the players say, what Dillingham says. I'm sure they'll have some thoughts on finishing last in the Big 12 media poll. And yeah, I mean, I haven't even brought this up, but like ASU is officially in the Big 12. Like, I don't even have a big thought about it, just because it's it's been news for this whole past year. We've talked about it ad nauseum. So we're in the Big 12. Go Truck Stops. Go Truck Stops, baby. Please like and subscribe, rate and review, and please follow the College Huddle. 70 shows with all sorts of, ranging from Alabama to G5 schools. They really help us out with a lot. And, we'll be talking with more College Huddle Big 12 partners throughout the year. So that should be really fun. But yeah, please follow the College Huddle on YouTube as well. And yeah, and then next week, Colton's back. We should be able to rank the best ASU head coaches since Frank Kush. So I'm excited. I'm excited to do that. I've kind of, looked at some Wikipedia pages already, kind of just see where guys stack up. But it'll be interesting to actually rank them. So that'll be fun. Still deciding if we should even rank Dillingham as part of it, because last year was such a weird season in that regard. Anyway, please like and subscribe, rate and review on your podcast app of choice. And as always, go Sun Devils.